got that out the way, let's go ahead and jump into our last topic of the day. And our last topic comes from a Mr. Danny. I think it's called, I think your last name is Bryce or Bernice. I'm gonna say Bryce. If I'm mispronouncing your last name, I do apologize.
Just call
But
him a scumbag in the comments section. Let him know.
definitely not doing that. But Mr. Danny writes, "Hey guys, so after watching the box office for multiple movies, I have to ask the question: are movie budgets too big?"
Yes,
I
thank you.
mean,
Next question.
I mean, when you look at Fast X was $350 million, and we got that beautiful part one movie. Let me stop joking, you guys. It was a good part one movie, but did it really need to be $350 million? When I look at the MCU as a whole, majority of their Avenger-like movies or solo movies are anywhere from $200 million and above. Should these movies get these elaborate budgets, or should they do something as simple as Deadpool 1, where their overall budget was $52 million? Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for taking my question. Well, thank you for your question, Danny. I've been saying this for the last couple months now, just just in random friend groups that I've been talking. We just talked about the DC. We just talked about Superman Legacy. If I'm James Gunn or if I'm any movie studio, to be honest, I don't think Superman Legacy needs to be $100 million. Personally, I think you can pull off a good DC movie for anything under $100 million. I think you can pull off a good DC movie for about $75 million. Now, let me just put it to you like this. If you look at the operation of Deadpool 1, most of Deadpool 1's marketing was done by Ryan Reynolds and his power of social media. That is the reason why it made a lot of money like it did. Now, when you watch the movie, you can tell that it is a very secluded, low budget movie, but it works because it works for that particular character. Now, the only part I disagree with you is that if you are making an Avengers movie, I do believe it should be about 200, maybe 250, depending on the type of story that you're telling. But to make Ant-Man Quantumania for about $200 million, I don't see why they couldn't have made that movie for $100 million or less.
It would have been better if it wasn't in the quantum realm, and then it would have been a whole lot cheaper.
Exactly. I mean, when I look at Ant-Man 1, I know Ant-Man 1's budget was nowhere near Ant-Man 3's budget. And Ant-Man 1 is a really good movie. And I know when you're adding stakes, there's going to be different levels to it. Contracts go up, and you have to pay your act. This goes into actors, producers, directors, and their pay raise and sets being designed. But listen, when I look at something like, the Batman, that character, a guy who has no superpowers, you can tell the Batman movie for, I believe, $50 million. You just use practical effects and you use stunt doubles and you tell a really good story. Now, I know the Batman was not $50 million, but I don't see why they couldn't have used that much money. Because again, Deadpool did a good job utilizing those budgets. And here's something, I'm going to say something that most studios and creative people may find offensive, or they may agree to. But I think when you have a low budget, it forces you to be creative.
Yep.
It forces you to be creative. And I'm sorry, some of these movies that have come out, like even the stuff on Netflix, that movie, The Gray Man, why was that movie over $200 million for a streaming movie? That movie didn't even come out in theater. It was a streaming movie, and I guarantee majority of that budget went to its cast. Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans. Like, I know they did that movie no less than maybe $30 to $40 million a piece. And obviously, we're in the debate now about residuals. I doubt they got any residuals from that movie. But I mean, they made that movie strictly for streaming. Same thing with something like The Mandalorian. I know that's not a movie, but it's a TV series. The budget of that was like $150 million for for 8 episodes. If that's the case, you should have just made a Mandalorian movie for less. That's how I'm just saying, when it comes to money, and this is the reason why there should be equal balance when it comes to studios creating projects. You should have the right creative people who know how to tell a story with a budget, regardless of how much it is. And you should have really good business people giving you an amount of money that doesn't break the bank. That is the reason why a lot of studios are being bought up by other studios. There's a reason why there's a lot of smaller, like for instance, I love what A24 is doing because they know the type of budget that they need.
Yes.
Plus the creative people to go behind that budget. So if they're going to get a high-end actor, they're going to negotiate with the actor and say, hey, I can't pay you 50 million, but I'll give you 10 million. Plus I'll give you residuals 10% of the dollar of how much this movie makes. That's a better deal for an actor than getting paid $50 million up front. And I'm just throwing out numbers. I'm just saying, when it comes to smaller studios, like I love what A24, Blumhouse, and even something as small as MGM that just got bought up by Amazon, they know how to work their budgets with particular films. That being said, to answer your question, like Jeremy said, yes, studios are spending way too much money when it comes to animation, when it comes to set designs, when it comes to casting, when it comes to these different things. The reason why, and I'm gonna get off my soapbox and pass it to Jeremy, but the reason why Tyler Perry's been able to thrive in his projects is because he's using his own money, his own studio, and he's shooting his movies very low. And everything that he does at his studio, he owns. So most, like Disney, they go to a third party to rent cameras. When you would think that Disney owns high-end cameras, they don't. I mean, I'm sure they do, but they still go to a third party to get the best cameras. They did that with Avatar 2, and they've done that with Marvel movies. So I'm just saying, like, when you are doing different films, it's easier to have your own equipment, your own things. That way you can cut your budgets very low, and then also negotiate with your actors and producers and set designers of how much you can have them build these types of things to put out a great product. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get better quality from $30 million movies. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you are forcing people to be creative with a low budget, anything is possible. And Deadpool is a good example of that. I think the first Blade is a good example of that. And I think other films that have come out that are not even comic book related are good examples. Like that movie with Michael B. Jordan, where he's using like the Force to, I forget what it was called. It was a movie by Josh Trank.
The superhero one with the found footage.
Yeah, it was like a found footage film. You know, that film was less than, I think, like $10 million or something like that.
Wild.
You know, and that movie is freaking amazing. And I'm just saying, like, you can create quality films by forcing your creative people to be creative. Jeremy, you're a creative person. You've made music. You've helped out on films. You create your own content. Do you think that budgets are way too high? And do you think that if they don't stop with the over gouging in budgets, that Hollywood will eventually go out of business?
So you want to make every movie an event, a reason to go to the theaters. If you can watch it on streaming, a lot of times you'll choose to watch it on streaming. You listed a bunch of really good examples. But I would challenge that an experience doesn't have to mean a city gets destroyed at the end. You look at movies like Transformers, and they're almost like numbing. Like, how many audience members look at that and are like, wow, I really appreciate the amount of money on display in front of me over
Right.
just valuing a good story. We went on these huge diatribes about how people need to get paid more in Hollywood. And then in the next segment, a couple segments later, we're talking about how studios are spending too much money on movies. And both of these things can be true at the
Mhm.
same time.
Mhm.
You can spend money in the right ways instead of spending it on frivolous razzmatazz that I promise people don't care about as much as the studios seem to think they do.
Mhm.
So here's a divisive film, Sound of Freedom. I hadn't seen it, don't know really much about it other than it's become like a big culture war thing. I do know that it cost $14.5 million to create, and this weekend it crossed the $100 million mark as of 2 days ago. So how much profit is that when you look at the percentages of it? Holy shit.
Mhm.
Where you look at a movie like Quantumania that cost, what'd you say, $200 million to make, all of
Mhm.
a sudden the bar that you have to cross to even turn a profit becomes insane. These studios are betting the house every single time they make a movie, and it's ridiculous. It's like,
Mhm.
why are you doing that? I don't understand. Every movie doesn't have to be in game. Only now, maybe every movie does have to be in game. But when you look at the flip side of that, Paranormal Activity, $15,000 budget.
Mhm.
Steven Spielberg put $1 million into the marketing campaign, and it was just reaction shots of the audience watching the movie. And that movie became a cultural phenomenon. It
Yeah.
is one of the most successful independent films of all time. It cost less to make and made more money than the Blair Witch Project. That
Mhm.
is just shows that, to your point, necessity is the mother of invention. If you're in a situation where you have to do something that is resourceful and creative and outside the box, it's amazing what people can come up with. So you just look at a movie like Paranormal Activity, the theatrical experience doesn't have to be the explosions on screen. Sometimes it can be just as simple as a surveillance camera set up in a room. There's no ghosts visible in Paranormal Activity. There's not a shot of visual effects until the very, very end of one of the alternate endings of the movie. And that just goes to show audiences like a lot of different things. Why do you keep trying to fucking force feed us the exact same thing over and over again? Bodies, bodies, bodies. Second highest per theater average of that entire year. It made $36,000 per theater in its first weekend of 2022 of release. That is insane. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies isn't
Yeah.
what you think of as a blockbuster, but when it cost $3 million to make, it doesn't take a whole lot of word of mouth and just positive feedback because the movie was good to double up, triple up, quadruple up, make 10 times the budget that the movie cost to make. And those seem like the winning propositions for the theater, not the, if we don't make $1 billion, we're fucked. It's like, why are you doing that to yourself? You don't got to do that to yourself. There's a movie coming out next weekend called Talk to Me. It's an A24 film, and I guarantee you it costs less than $4.5 million to make. I guarantee you it's going to break $20 million in its first weekend. It's going to make 4 times its budget in one weekend. And it doesn't have to be the #1 box office movie of the year to be one of the most profitable movies of the year. So y'all keep an eye on that. And that's my pushback to this idea that every movie has to cost $200 million, is that the ones that make the most are the ones that cost the least, you dumbasses. I don't understand why that's hard to track. Stop making. The reason why movie theater tickets are $15 each now is because of these crazy inflated budgets. So less VFX, don't work a million VFX artists to death, 60 hours a week for a couple, like hire the ones you need, pay them well, get a couple of good actors who are willing to work because they believe in the project, not because it's a $1 billion industry. Like, how many people will kill to be in a Wes Anderson movie. You know, they're not making money for being in a Wes Anderson movie. Quentin Tarantino to a lesser degree, because his movies do pretty well, but there's some filmmakers, Woody Allen, that people just want to work with, and they will take smaller checks just to be a part of this thing that is artistic and that they believe in. But movies have turned into commerce and capitalism at its peak. And don't get me wrong, there's always been an element of that. But when you see the amount of money these movies are making, you're going to demand more. So yeah, I feel like movies can be diverse. Movies can be a lot of different things. They don't all have to follow the exact same formula to be successful and to capture the zeitgeist. So I'd like to see more of that, please.
Yeah. And I 100% agree. You know, I don't think that, again, when you are making a film or even like, for instance, there are TV series that are great that work on less and they are able to put out great product. And you know, just because you have a lot more money in something, you can use that for marketing. You can, like, for instance, social media for the most part is free.
That's a really good point.
If you have a good following, and the people who are involved in your project have a good following, you can literally mass market your film almost for pennies on the dollar.
Absolutely.
Without even buying ads. So my thing is, as a creator, as a filmmaker, as an actor, my thing is that, listen, you don't need to spend $100 million on a movie. My advice to James Gunn, as he's creating his DCU, if you're going to spend $100 million, over $100 million, let it be for movies that you know have a good buildup. The reason why the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least for the first 3 phases, was successful is because they gave us good movies building up to a good point where Avengers, and then Age of Ultron, then Infinity War, and then Endgame. Like, when we got Endgame, that was in a culmination of so many great films with multiple different budgets. And I think that's where big budgets justify the means. But when I look at A24, especially what they did with Everything All at Once, I don't need them to have an Avatar budget to do a movie like that. And that movie was really good. Versus, like, even with something like Across the Spider-Verse was over $100 million. All of that is animation, and that movie made its money back. Now, if you spend $200 million on Across the Spider-Verse on an animated film, you're a fucking idiot. I'm sorry that you're an idiot for doing that, spending that kind of money on an animated film when it doesn't cost that much to make an animated film. I mean, so me personally, to Jeremy's point, I think with certain films, they don't need to be Avengers Endgame to be great. And anybody, just bare mathematics, you know, you don't really need to learn this in business class, but if you spend $10 on something and make $1,000, I mean, you just profit $990.
Terrifier 2 came out in 2022, right at the end of the year. It cost $250,000 to make. It made $15 million at the box office. How many percentages? You know what I mean? That's an insane increase in profits. And to your point about viral marketing, they screened it at a festival, and they said, like, people were passing out or people were vomiting in the theater, and just that caught wind on social media, and it did the marketing for itself. So if you can turn, to your point, if you can turn $250,000 into $16 million, that's way better than turning $200 million into $300 million.
Exactly. So I think some of these studios, I think now in this time during this strike where all production is now essentially done until they come to the table with a deal. I think they need to reevaluate their budgets, and I think Bob Iger, for a lot of firings that he has done, especially. I live in Orlando. There are a lot of people who got fired from Disney. There are a lot of people who got fired from the ESPN Center here, and also like just multiple divisions across the board. They definitely need to do some restructuring. Same thing with Warner Brothers, same thing with Paramount, same thing with Universal. But I would encourage them to say, if you're going to make an interesting live action film of any kind based off whatever, you don't have like reevaluate your budget. And if you're going to have, like, I don't know, if you're going to have Leonardo DiCaprio in your movie, you can negotiate with him of what his cap is. Now, if he's not going to take anything less than $50 million, then get a different actor.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Get a Leonardo DiCaprio type.
Exactly. Get a different actor who has maybe a better quality of acting than he does. You just never know. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that movie studios spend too much money? Jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. I want to take this moment and thank our sponsors, Blurred Creations. Blurred Creations is an independent Black-owned anime apparel company that produces high quality apparel on their website. If you go to Blurred Creations, you get things from shirts to accessories to all different types of apparel of your favorite anime characters. And guess what, guys? We're running a special on this particular website. If you type in the promo code MOMENTUM, you get 15% off each purchase of any item on the website. So if you are a supporter of mine and you want to support this independent Black company, go to their website at Blurred Creations, type in the word momentum, and you get 15% off each purchase on their website. I want to thank you guys again for supporting our sponsors, and also, guys, be a sponsor and a subscriber of our YouTube channel, Momentum Media.